So our next topic is about for loop. Okay, so what is a for loop? A for loop is used for iterate over a sequence. Okay, so a sequence could be a list, a sequence could be a tuple, a sequence could be a dictionary or anything. Okay, so with the for loop we can execute a set of statements or a block of code once for each item in a list or in a tuple or any sequence. Okay, so first we have to initialize a sequence. Okay, then we enter into our condition, or we evaluate a condition which says, did it read all the elements in the sequence? If the answer is no, it will come to this set of statements. Okay, and it will go again to our condition and it will see, did it read all the elements? If the answer is still no, it will go or it will execute this part of the statement. Okay, and the moment the condition read all the elements, it will take another path. Okay, so it will take another path and it will exit from our for loop. Okay, so in for loop we have two methods. Okay, so the syntax of first method is this. So the syntax says for, and we have a variable, then we have our in, okay, and then we have our sequence, okay, and then we have our block of code or block of statements. Okay, and in this case for and in are the keywords. Okay, so for and in are keywords, and the item in the sequence is read into a variable, and the set of statements or block of statements from 1 to n are executed on the item read in the variable. Okay, so loop will continue until all the items or all the elements in a sequence are read. Okay, so remember, incrementation or the decrementation of item index is automatic. Okay, so let's do further and talk about a small example which says, how do you display the items in a list of countries? Okay, so in this case, what is the sequence? The sequence is a list, right? So what is the sequence? Sequence is a list. So we have a list of countries: India, USA, China, and United Kingdom. And then we have our for loop which says for I. So I is nothing but a variable, for is a keyword, I is a variable, in is a keyword, and the list country is nothing but the sequence. Okay, and then when we print I, it will give like India, USA, China, and United Kingdom. Okay, so remember, the incrementation of item index is automatic. Okay, and similarly you can loop through different type or different data type or different sequences. Okay, so in this case, what is the sequence? It's a list, right? But similarly you can loop through tuples, you can loop through sets, you can loop through any sequence. Okay, so let's talk about the same example in Spider. So let's try the same example. It says, how do you display the items in a list of countries? Okay, and let's say I have a list of countries. Let's say list 1 is equals to, and for defining a list we use square brackets, right? So I have a list in which I have, say, China, and I have, let's say, Japan, and say USA. Okay, then I have, say Singapore. Okay, so I have these countries. Okay, and I just want to display the items in this list. Okay, so in here we have our for expression which says for I. So remember, I is an index. Okay, I in. So in is a keyword, and then we have our sequence, which is list one. Okay, and we have a colon. Okay, and in here we print I. Okay, so what does that mean is it will read. Okay, it will read and print all these elements, all these items one by one. Okay, and when I print I and run this program, it will give like China, Japan, USA, and Singapore. Okay, so let's talk about continue in for loop. Okay, so let's understand the concept of continue by considering an example which says display the items in a list of countries and ignore when the country is India. Okay, so I have a list of countries: India, USA, China, and United Kingdom, and then I have my for loop or for expression. Okay, and then I have an if construct which says if I is equal to India, continue. Okay, continue statement, we can stop the current iteration and continue with the next iteration. Okay, so when I print I, it will give like USA, China, and United Kingdom. Okay, so the iteration one, which is iteration for India, is like ignored. All right, so let's do further and talk about break in for loop. Okay, so our example says display the items in a list of countries and stop when the country is China. Okay, so for that we have a list of countries, and then we have for expression, and then we have an if construct which says if I is equal to China, break. Okay, so with break statement we can stop the execution of the loop after the break point. Okay, so execute the elements after the break point or after the China. Okay, so when I print I, it will give like India and USA. Okay, so let's take a look at our continue and break statement in Spider. So we have a question which says display the items in a list of countries and ignore when the country is India. Okay, so I have a list of countries. Let's say list 2 is equals to and here we have India, then I have China, sorry, okay, and then I have let's say USA. Okay, so and in here we have our for loop. It says for let's say for J in, and we have our sequence, right? So what is the sequence? The sequence is list 2, right? So we have list 2 followed by a colon, and then we have an if construct, okay, which says if J is equals to sorry, if J is equals to India, then a colon, we have continue. Sorry, continue. Okay, and in here we have printed or executed I. Sorry, J. Okay, so when we execute this whole program, it will give like, okay, sorry, let me just comment this out. Yeah, okay, when we run this program, it will give like China and USA. Okay, so I hope you're getting the point of continuing for loop. So let's take a look at break statement in for loop. We have a question for break statement which says display the items in a list of countries and stop when the country is China. Okay, so for that we have our list 2. Okay, so we have already created our list 2, so I'm using that. Okay, And in here we have our for loop. It says for I'm using another variable, let's say k. For k in sequence, what is the sequence? It's list 2 followed by a colon. Then we have our if construct, which says if k is equals to what? China. Okay, we have break. Okay, and in here we have executed I. Okay, it's k. Okay, so when we execute this whole program, it will give like India, only India. Okay, so let's do further and talk about our next method, or our second method, okay, which is range function. Okay, so using a range function, we have a syntax which is for, we have a variable, then and then we have in range, and then we have to give an argument. Okay, could be control variable or it could be an ending value. Okay, so then we have our statements. In this case, for, in and range are the keywords. Okay, so for, in and range are the keywords. Okay, and the range function defaults to 0 as a starting value. Okay, that means, let's say we have our range 10. Okay, so it's not the value of 0 to 10, it's the value of 0 to 9. Okay, so let's consider a small example which says display the numbers from 0 to 5 using range method. Okay, so we have our for loop which says for I in range 6. Okay, so the range function defaults to 0 as a starting value, and see, we have to display the numbers from 0 to 5, right? So that's why we have an argument 6. Okay, so the range 6 is not the value of 0 to 6, it's the value of from 0 to 5. Okay, and then we have printed I, or we have printed the variable. Okay, and when we execute this whole program, it will give 0 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, so let's try to understand the concept of the same example in Spider. So we have a same question which says display the numbers from 0 to 5 using range method. Okay, so for that we have a for loop which is for, let's say, z in range. Okay, so range is nothing but a keyword, in is a keyword, z is a variable, and for is a keyword. Okay, and in parentheses we have an argument 6. Okay, so when we print z, it will give like 0 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, so what if I have an argument 5? Okay, so when we run this program, it will give like 0 1 2 3 4. Okay, 5 is not included, but we have to include 5, right? So for that we have an argument 6. So I hope you're getting the point of range method in for loop. So defining a starting point. Okay, so as you can see in our range function, we have 2 comma 10. That means in our first argument, okay, so this is our first argument, which is 2, is our starting point. Okay, and 10 is our ending point. Okay, so which means value starting from 2 to 10 but not including 10. Okay, so I have a small example, okay, in which I have a for loop, in which I have a range, in which I have 3 comma 6. Okay, so the starting value is 3 and our ending value is 6. Okay, so when I print I, it will give like 3, 4, 5. Okay, so the index 0, 1, 2 are ignored and it started from index 3. Okay, so how do we define a sequence incrementation value? So as we have discussed before, the incrementation or decrementation item index is automatic, right? So but how can we control that incrementation value? Okay, so we can control that incrementation by value by this. So as you can see here, I have a range of 3 arguments, 2, 10, 2. Okay, in which 2 is the starting value, 10 is the ending value, and this 2 is the incrementation value. Okay, so that means it will increment the sequence by 2. Okay, so let's consider a small example in which I have a range 0, 6, 2. That means the starting value is 0, the ending value is 6, and our incrementation value is 2. Okay, so when we print I, it will give like 0, 2, and 4. Index 1, 3, 5 are skipped as the index at every time is incremented by 2. Okay, so let's understand the same example in Spider. So let's say I have a for loop for, let's say, for C in range and in here we have a starting value, let's say 0, and my ending value is, let's say, 20, and my incrementation value is, let's say, 2. Okay, so when we print C, it will give like 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So as you can see, the sequence is incrementing by 2, right? So I hope you're getting the point of incrementation in for loop. So that's it in this video lecture. In this video lecture, we have learned about while loop and for loop. We have learned about continue and break statement. We have learned about incrementation in for loop. We have learned about both the methods in for loop, right? So in other video lecture, we'll talk about functions in Python. So until that, goodbye and thank you for watching. Thank you.